Hopefully the leaf blower guy will be gone.
Sorry, I didn't hear you because the music is playing a little loud.
I said, hopefully the leaf player guy will be gone. I got a leaf blower in the background.
Oh, I can. oh, It's fine right now.
Okay, cool.
I would have liked to be in at that concert. I look good, man.
Thanks. It was very, very hot. That was a summer day in Austin, Texas. So if we
Oh.
sound cool, we were actually hot.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just doing one more adjustment here. I want to get on if people come on YouTube, they can talk to me on YouTube. Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is my new friend, Jeff Lofton. I like him. He's a cool guy. And very happy to meet him because he's really a great musician and really a nice person. We had a talk before just to check our Zoom settings and stuff. And yep.
Thanks. I give you the sign of approval as well.
Thank you. He's in Austin, so if I was in the same town as him, I'd probably be going to hear him a lot. Really good. Do you ever come to LA?
I was there for the Grammys last. That was fun, but I haven't performed in LA, and I certainly would like to.
Yeah, it would be really great to have you here.
I got some family out there. It's nice to visit.
Oh, cool. Well, if you ever kind of think about that in the future, I'll see if I can be helpful at all,
Thanks.
Yeah. Hi, Taylor. Taylor is here. He's a guitarist at UNT, and he's happy that you're a part of the Texas music scene.
Ooh.
He'll be asking some deep questions, so just as we go, because he's a deep thinker. So
all right, I like that.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna start like I never had talked to you before, but you have a very to me a very I'm not sure how to put it, a very distinct music space that you operate in, and that's part of what attracts me to you, and it's not necessarily, to me, it's not necessarily just from playing for years. It's kind of a being thing. You were probably born in that space, and then the actions that you did just kind of, brought you along to exhibit and to collaborate in that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no one thus far has put it quite like that. I do like how you put that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever said it like that either.
Hey, well, this is improvisation. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. It's the cool thing about really talking to people because, they, everybody stimulates something different, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, so therefore, I'd like to know about your beginnings because just curious to kind of further my imagination with you as a little boy, and getting into that space.
Well, my mother always had some kind of keyboard around the house. And I think that's essential for all budding musicians is to have access to, I guess if you're a guitar player, that works as well. But for me, access to a keyboard is just essential because just really being unfeathered to go sit down and experiment when I was younger, before I even got a trumpet, that was essential to my development, I think. And just having access to, sometimes she'd have an organ, sometimes she'd have an actual piano, have one of those old Kimball organs.
Yeah.
Those were fun. And so having that makes a big difference in just being able to hear what can happen when you're playing around with a keyboard, with an instrument.
Did
So
you
that
have
was my
siblings?
first musical experience, I would say.
Did you have siblings who were musical too?
My sister was playing clarinet. She's about 4 years older. My
Uh-huh.
brother had a very big influence on me, but not as a musician per se. But he's the one that had the stereo and would go out and buy records and bring them home. So some of the early records he would have were like Earth, Wind and Fire, OJ's, Barry Manilow, Elton John, Parliament, whatever was going on at that time. So I had a lot of access to the top 40. And fortunately for me, he also brought home a couple of Chuck Mangione records as well. And, you know, not just the hits, he was actually interested enough to buy a few other ones that weren't as popular, and gave me access to a whole nother set of music that I hadn't heard before. That and some of the stuff that my parents had. My parents actually had an old Gene Ammons album that I listened to and heard bebop for the first time, and was just so blown away. I had no idea what that was. Had never heard it, never experienced it. And most of the album was kind of based on soul jazz. It had a tuba player. It was real slow blues beats, but they had one up-tempo bebop blues, and that was all it took. Howard McGee. That's all it took. Hearing Howard McGee one time.
Uh, that's very cool. Yeah, yeah. Just made me think about a few things, you know, like I think I just I mean for me I grew up in a musical household and um yeah, I guess I don't think taking for granted is actually it's just I don't know, take that word that term is kind of guilt ridden. But I don't think I took it for granted. I think it was just my life, you know. You know, there was no day that went by without music in the house and you know and my mother had been a singer before, my dad was a sax player and a band leader, and I got turned on to his music. But my sisters, like your sister were 4 years older than me, they were twins, and they both sang and one played piano, so we all the three of us, you know, were around the piano all the time. Um and you know their music my music was a little more what you said, you know, that the contemporary music, and it was Boston, and it was, you know, there was blues, and there was Motown was huge at that time, and uh, but for me too, I was really drawn to Miles. I guess my dad had he had Stan Kenton records and singer records and stuff, so Miles was really that kind of uh, uh, you know smooth uh, that feeling, that copacetic kind of feeling, you know, that
That only Miles gives you.
yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I remember when I heard like Bitches Brew and stuff like that. I was so turned off. I was so into the other Miles, you know. And it took me a while actually to like leave, you know, like go on, you know, and kind of look for.
Yeah, I'm being from the South, you know, what we kind of call the buckle of the Bible Belt sometimes. Take my mom taking me to the record store to buy a Bitches Brew was an experience. Like, what's the name of the album, boy?
Bitches Brew.
Yeah, so that was my experience. And when I heard it, I was not turned off. I was just so blown away, and at the same time, just kind of mystified. It took me a while to get back to that, to really dig it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
But like that was probably my first Miles Davis experience, like before, like owning a record. I had heard him on the radio because fortunately public radio in my town was something that was way advanced for where I was at, especially.
Yeah.
We actually had, you know, where I was, we were actually producing the Marion McPartland piano jazz shows
Oh.
from South Carolina, even though
Oh.
she was recording in New York.
Huh.
So we were pretty advanced, and I had a good record store. The first Miles album I bought after that was My Funny Valentine, the live concert. And that was life changing.
I can imagine, man. Wow. Yeah. You must have just, I mean, it must have just kind of set off possibilities in your head.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
You
were
know, I mean, and
playing,
I'd heard a lot of jazz by then. You know, I think I was 18.
okay.
I
And you were
really
already
started.
playing trumpet, right?
I had been playing trumpet since 11,
Okay.
and so like by the time I heard Miles, I'd been listening to a lot of jazz. You know, I started maybe about at 15 when I got introduced to public radio, which again another life changing thing. I was really into classical music, and then I started listening to jazz because I was just, you know, during my summers, that's what I spent my summers doing, listening to public radio for 15, 16, 17. Yeah. So I had heard a lot of stuff, but I had never heard the second rate quintet in the early 60s with Miles playing with Tony Williams and Herbie and Ron Carter. And I think that album has George Coleman on it too. That was so rare and so unique. And I got it at a record store called Papa Jazz. That's still there in Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, yeah. That must have, I can just imagine how that. So, did you immediately start playing, like kind of looking into that style of playing for yourself, or had you already been entering into that, or?
Yeah, I was actually digging Nat Adderley a lot
Mm, okay.
before that. Um, and just like another rare thing, I just came across that Mercy, Mercy, Mercy album. And, you know, I heard Nat Adderley and it was like, okay, this is a whole nother thing, a whole nother place to go.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I was already interested in improvisation, but it took a very long time to really start digging bop. I kind of started more as a free player,
Mm,
really into art ensemble, Sun Ra, Shep, Pharoah Sanders. That's kind of
yeah.
my early
I see.
playing
So,
experience.
somebody, I went to see a free music concert the other night, and my girlfriend uh, is not that familiar with that style. And she was wondering if they were good at it because they came from classical, which I had never really thought about because I know a lot of people who have come from classical or have classical involved in their lives. I don't I don't think that's a necessary part of it, but you mentioned that you had been listening a lot to classical. Do you think free music is, I don't know, better, or is it a natural progression from classical? What do you think?
Uh, for some people, it can be, although it's harder. It seems to me a bit harder for classical musicians to play some styles of, you know, avant-garde jazz, free music, as we call it, because of the emphasis on swing and how swing is done compared to the straight, you know, quarter note feeling that most classical music has.
Yeah,
That usually is the barrier between those two musics.
yeah,
And so I kind of find that although avant-garde music lends itself to various styles, jazz and classical equally, really, um, when those two musicians get together, that's usually the intersection that causes problems. Like, where's the swing, how to swing,
yeah.
and you know,
Right. It so involves space as opposed to swing, or
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, God, the space is.
To me, the key to the free playing is your drummer.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it's really all about the drummer.
hmm,
And so for classical musicians,
yeah.
that's not really ever where they're at.
Yeah.
I mean, they're usually not in that, oh, it's all about the drummer space.
Yeah.
So it's not really typical of most classical stuff. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, and having a drummer that understands those conceptions, what's supposed to be going on, because the bass player, generally speaking, is going to be holding down some type of rhythm, you know, beat. Everything else may go in any direction. Usually the bass player is holding it down. And because of that, if you have a drummer that's playing as free as a piano player, say,
Yeah.
like that's not usually going to work as well.
Yeah.
The drummer has to know where to be, you know, what aspects to bring of free music to keep it swinging. Because I mean, free jazz is still jazz.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So the other night, you might know some of these guys. Do you know Alex Klein? Do you
I
know?
don't think so.
Well, anyway, if you came here and you were playing some free music, you'd probably
What's his? Will you spell his last name for me?
Cline.
Okay.
He has a brother, Nils. So Alex is a percussionist and Nils is a guitarist. They're both into free music. And and he's quite accomplished, and it was his ensemble. And the first half was a piece he had written for Korean, Tibetan monk, um, and it involved a traditional folk song. Although it was kind of vague in there, but it was there.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the second half was just free, but him and his partner Will Salmon, who's um, let's see, he's a singer and a woodwind player, piano player, and an actor. And he and Alex created this kind of theater group called the Open Gate Theater, and they've had once a month concerts for 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's avant-garde, stuff. And and then there was a really interesting pianist who was using the piano, percussionally,
Yeah.
and a koto player Japanese koto player. And that was really cool. And a cellist and a violinist. And yeah, it was
Yeah, free
yeah.
jazz lends itself to that type of mixture of musics and different variations on ensembles more than anything else.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why I think a lot of classical players are drawn to that because
Wow.
well, one thing you really get to play out on the lines. I mean, you don't have to you don't have to anything, really.
It's interesting when you come across people who want to play in the lines and that makes them uncomfortable, or people who are excited by that, right? Playing out of the lines.
I like to describe playing outside as really that you're so far inside the music
Yeah.
that it appears to the onlooker that you're playing outside.
Oh, I have to wait. I have to wrap my head around that. So you're so inside.
You're so inside that it looks like you're outside, but really you're just so far inside the music
Oh,
that unless you're that deep in, you're not going to recognize it as being anything but outside. When it's well done, when avant-garde jazz is done properly, that's what's happening.
right. I can understand that. Yeah. That's that's a really interesting way of putting it. And but I can really relate because sometimes I might see an avant-garde uh, concert and really not feel it. And then other
Yeah,
times I really feel it, like Vinny Golia. I think you know Vinny Golia, right? The
yeah.
sax player. Yeah. So I at this venue that I've been booking, I've booked him once a month, and it's just so frigging great. And but the cool thing is if you sit there and listen, it's very melodic, without being da 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 da, without being that. It's really melodic.
To
It's
me, that's when Ornette sounds
ah,
the most interesting, is when he'll mix in the melodic with that's the outside stuff. And you know, melody is so ingrained in us as human beings
yeah,
that we're always trying to sense that when we're listening
yeah,
to anything.
yeah,
I mean, whether it's like a phone ringing, or whether it's birds, or the sound of a jackhammer, patterns and rhythmic ideas and all these things exist in all that sound.
yeah,
So we're always trying to put that together somehow,
yeah,
especially for musicians, always trying to create rhythmic patterns of sound.
yeah. I'm just curious, do you meditate?
Yeah, I've been meditating for years. Yeah.
That's because when you said that, that there's melody everywhere. When I meditate, that's it's brings me into this kind of space. You're hearing things, and they're all like little melodies, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I spent a long time um, deliberately working on eliminating my internal dialogue. And if you don't know what that is, it's the voice that's constantly running in the back of your head,
Yep.
that most people have. I, over a vast period of time, have pretty much eliminated that aspect. And so when I have other ideas come into my head, it's more obvious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good state of mind.
It's working for me.
Yeah. That's my biggest challenge in teaching vocalists, you know, to deal with that internal dialogue. It's so hard, especially
Oh
for,
yeah, I guess that must really affect vocals way more than other stuff.
I think it
Because
does.
almost when you're playing, that's almost a state of stopping it
Yeah.
in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's so many things going on. Say like what valve position, how much wind I'm using. Is this going to stick when I'm playing it? Intonation. Of course, God Almighty, for trumpet players, that's a whole nother lesson in playing trumpet. Just how to play
Yeah.
that god awful beast in tune. It is something. But like the normal internal dialogue kind of ends because you've got to focus so much on what you're doing. It's almost like naturally occurring. But if you have to think about lyrics, you're already thinking about words. You've already put yourself in a dialogue to begin with.
You're right. I mean, there's the instrument and all those things that you were saying, Um, and hopefully, as a singer, I've done my practicing. So when I sing, it's interesting because the emotion of the words, uh, well, when you're singing, like a song, right? Not singing free, but uh, when you're singing a song, the emotion and the forward moving through the emotion and the story actually carries along the technique magically. So you don't, you're, the the goal is not to think about technique, but
Yeah.
just focus on the communication of it. Yeah, and you know, it's especially for some students who aren't that experienced, you know, I can see them thinking.
Yeah.
It's like you're thinking. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you know I'm thinking? I can see you thinking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and just everything else. Then you have to. Then there's the musical part of it,
Yeah.
and explaining to them that they're a member of the band.
Yeah. Uh, we have this thing that we used to call piano player time.
Uh-huh.
And it comes from piano players that spend all their time practicing and playing solo music and never play with an ensemble.
There you go.
Yeah,
I guess every instrument could do that, right? I mean, guitars, that's famous, for the guitar player image. They're just
yeah.
doing, you know.
But guitarists tend to play with other people more than
Yeah.
piano players get to. Yeah. A lot of times, so many solo piano player gigs, and there's so many, and most other instruments have some ensemble element to them. So you have to play with other people, right? From the beginning.
Yeah.
So the whole issue of time becomes pertinent and relevant immediately,
Yeah.
as opposed to 10 years after you've been playing, and now you want to join the band.
There's this one, I always tell my students about this. I really should just pull it out and play it for them, but it's a Schofield record. I think it's a groovin', and Charlie Hayden's playing with him. And so John takes a great grooving solo, it's a great guitar solo, it's pretty, full, right? And Charlie's solo comes up and he plays whole notes and it's perfect, So I try and use that as an emphasis to say it's not just about you. It's you're serving the music. You're making everything sound good, and you're all working together.
Yeah.
So
Serving the music is such a great way of looking at it, because so often you have people that don't get that conception. Whenever I'm on the bandstand, if I'm leading a group, if someone, like I've had, as I guess everybody has, people that are playing, you playing with them, and you get to the bridge, they're not at the bridge, or they get lost or something like that. And I've always found that if you don't talk about that with them, if you don't try to correct them, you don't do any of that stuff while you are in the middle of a performance, you have a much better chance of them playing correctly on the next tune. So I'm not going to worry about that mistake. I'm going to worry about what's coming up next.
yeah, that's a great way of helping, right? Too.
Yeah, I mean, no one needs extra pressure after they've already messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, and everybody in the band knows you messed up. Why? What's the point of me telling you? Is that going to make you play better? That's the question every band leader should ask yourself every time. Is that going to make me sound better? Is that going to make my group sound better? And if it doesn't, if the answer is not yes, don't do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. I was thinking too, like, I don't know if it's the same for you being a leader and stuff, or probably just changes, but I like to, I also, and I try and stress this with my students, don't come in after 4 bars of an intro. Give it 8 or a 16 or whatever. Don't come in after 4 because it's like, okay, I'm ready. It's all about me. It's like, no, the band, I mean, as soon as you pass 4 bars, the band relaxes and they make this palette, that's really nice, and it becomes unique. It becomes something special.
That intro for that piece of music for that day and that time. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, one Taylor question. As a trumpet player, what kind of fundamentals do you go back to for inspiration? And is there anything specific you're trying to improve?
Nothing in particular for fundamentals. I'm always just trying to play what I hear at this point. That's really what it's about. What was the other question again?
Is there anything specific you're trying to improve on the trumpet?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm working, and the thing that does make me a little unique is I do single tonguing exclusively. I don't know if you know anything about trumpet playing,
I
single
don't know,
tonguing,
single
double
tonguing.
tonguing, triple
No,
tonguing.
no.
The double tongue is when you go taka 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 taka, and triple tonguing is tika da tika da tika da tika da. That it's a back and forth on the trumpet. So what I'm doing is I'm doing everything single tongued so that I'm just um, at any tempo, and that's the key, of course, because as you single tongue, it becomes harder to you got the motion going in just one direction. In other words, the wind is going in one direction, and so to do that really fast to get that fast enough where you can play that bop stuff and tongue and create that sound. Um, like Clark Terry used to talk about it as doodling, and um, when you play trumpet, you use syllables. I guess most people probably don't know that, but it is a very almost spoken type um, experience. So, like Clark Terry would be doodle daddle deedle doodle. So and so that process is what I'm working on to make the clean single tone, um, put that in melodies. Always trying to put technique to combine technique at a high level, but make it sound musical and not overdone. And finding that line. That's what I'm working on most specifically, as far as trumpet is concerned.
That's cool. Yeah, I've heard that term a little bit. Excuse me. I have a friend who's a really great trombone player, Bob McChesney, and he does some. He's kind of unique in the trombone, and it might be. I don't. I feel like it's triple tonguing, but I don't really know.
Yeah, well, yeah, especially with trombone players as well, because you're using a slide. Um, Getting the coordination between that motion, because this is all we're doing, it's a
Yeah,
lot easier than actually making
trombone is
positions.
a bitch,
So
man.
playing that really fast,
Yeah.
yeah, Ron Westray grew up same time as me, great trombone player, played with Winton for a long time. He has that in abundance where he can play really fast and do that. Wycliffe Gordon is like that as well. Also another trombone player from the South Carolina area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of musicians who come out of South Carolina. Not all of them admit to it, but there's a lot of cats that have come out of that area. That a lot of talent come out of South Carolina.
Huh.
And if
Oh,
you think about it, bebop really is half of bebop, at least Monk and Dizzy,
oh,
Coltrane, all coming out of South of
oh,
North Carolina.
I didn't know that. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. When I first moved to California, I'm from Boston, so there was a book I got into, which was an Indian book, American Indian, and it talked. It was it was really a good book. It was a story, but it laid out how Indians thought at that time or coming up. They thought they had these medicine shields, and so everybody carried a shield with them, no matter what tribe they were from, where they were from. And but on the shield, there were colors and animals that depicted um, where your spirit was uh, kind of at, and what you needed was obvious. So, for instance, there was I think the east was an eagle. That was the animal for the east. So, if there was an eagle on there or no eagle. So if I met you and even if I didn't speak your language, I could see by your shield what you needed to grow as a being. And so that was kind of the premise, which is a really beautiful
Yeah,
premise, right?
yeah,
Yeah, so it's always kind of, after I read that book, I was kind of intrigued by where people were from, just mostly because of how it felt. Like you just said, so many of the great jazz players, bebop players were from that area. Wow. I had no idea, but that's significant, has a certain
yeah.
feeling to it,
It definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, can we hear some more? So, I want to go here before I get into more Taylor questions.
Yeah.
Um, now, anything you want me to play, or
Mm,
I guess
You
there's,
could play you could play something from the new album if you like.
yeah, is that Silver Strut?
Yeah.
Okay, and what would
Hey,
you?
how about play Corcovado?
Sure.
I don't think it's getting that much airplay, so I
Okay,
might have to get it out there.
great. So this is your new record.
Yes.
Okay, and where can people get it?
It's available at all the normal places
Okay.
that you buy stuff. If you want to get an actual physical copy, you can go to my website.
Website, ladies and gentlemen, because I do have people who do that.
JeffLofton.com.
Okay.
Nothing too complicated.
Nice.
Thank you.
Corcovado. Yeah. Do you play flugelhorn too?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Trumpet, flugelhorn.
Well, they're different, although very similar.
Yeah.
Flugel takes a lot more wind to play, and it's got its peculiarities in the upper register and stuff like that. But it's essentially the same.
What
E
was that
flat.
other the other trumpet that was smaller? Bill Berry used to play one.
You talking about a pocket trumpet,
No, concert.
like what Don Cherry plays?
Let me just go look. I was Bill Berry. Bill Berry. Do you remember Bill Berry?
No.
That name? He was he had an interesting history. He was like the only white player, like with Duke Ellington, or for a while, or he played. Well, it says trumpet, but he played. It was a different
Oh, you mean the
slight
cornet?
cornet. Yeah, yeah, that was what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's essentially it's the same instrument. The difference is the tubing is set up differently. It's still the same amount of tubing, which is of course what makes the gives the instrument its key. Um, as a B flat trumpet is a little longer tubing than a C trumpet, but a B flat cornet has the same amount of tubing as a B flat trumpet. It's just set up differently. The chords are closer together,
Oh,
and so the sound is. Some people say the sound is more a little darker, more melodious.
you don't hear about people playing that very much, right? Cornet.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You don't hear people playing the cornet.
Nat Adderley used to play cornet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like the only really, really famous uh cornet, modern, cornet player that I could think of. Most of the stuff he was playing on was played on a cornet.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Bill Berry was he lived in L.A. and like I said, he had quite he had a deep history, but of course a lot of people have deep histories that we don't know their names.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was the nicest guy in the world. Great, really cool guy. So yeah. Um, let's see. Taylor has a bunch of questions here, but let's see. If you could name three trumpet records that immediately blew your mind, which ones would they be? But we know that Miles Davis, My Funny Valentine.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I would say probably the Basin Street, Clifford Brown Max Roach.
Uh-huh.
And then it's hard to narrow one down. I can't think of the album, but it's the one Freddie Hubbard does where he has Up Jump Spring on it.
Oh yeah. That's
But
like
I can't think of the
famous
name of the
record.
album.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Freddie Hubbard. That was that's another player that must have blown your mind too. Really beautiful.
Yeah, his playing is he was one of those that just mega chops, just such a great player. But he would put that in, strategically so that it wasn't just chops. It was all of that mixed in with, all the melodic and rhythmic integrity.
Yeah. What are you doing these days? You're in Austin, right, for the most part?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's happening in your life?
Well, I got a regular gig that I do every second Wednesday of the month. It's with my electric group, the Jeff Lofton Electric thing. And we're working on doing different types of, it's basically the hits, we're doing the hits from different eras, and doing them in a way, giving people music that's recognizable,
Yeah.
but also doing it in the way that we do it, which has elements of avant-garde, elements of 60s miles, bitches brew in a silent way type thing, but it's also us.
Yeah.
So it's about 6 musicians that I work with on that. It's a larger ensemble than I normally work with.
Yeah. What kind of a place is it? Is it a like a jazz room, or is
It's
it?
actually based on more of an Afro pop sort of, but they play all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Blues, dance music, DJs, and on the second Wednesday of the month, it's electric jazz night.
Yeah. How long have you been in Austin now? Because you were
Moved
out of
in
Austin
2006,
2006 from.
South Carolina.
Oh, okay. So you went right over to Austin.
I had lived North Texas before,
Uh-huh.
and after I divorced my daughter's mother, after we got divorced, she moved to Austin,
Oh,
and so it was really just about being closer to my daughter.
oh, I see. Cool.
She was growing up.
So 2006. So have, how do you like Austin for the music?
Great town.
Yeah.
It really is. It's got a lot of really good elements. I could I've seen much better city management. I'm just going to leave it at that
Yeah.
at this point in time, and hopefully those things will change. But good community, a lot of people, a lot of varying people. Right now, it's a very international place as well. Good place to raise your kids still, and a lot of natural beauty. And the music scene, it really is pretty extraordinary. Um, Not so much the jazz scene, but the music scene in general. Although there's a lot of jazz still, but like the players here, if you want to work and if you want to just work as a musician, you have to play everything. There's almost nobody that, I did it for a while. All I play is jazz pretty much.
Yeah.
But there's almost nobody that's all they do. And everybody does something else.
Yeah. I have a bunch of friends who have moved there, and also lately to Nashville,
Oh
which
yeah, yeah.
also, I mean, that doesn't seem to be a big jazz town, you know? I
But
mean,
it's
there's
got a lot of
jazz.
great jazz players.
Yeah, but they don't make a living only from jazz, right?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. It's interesting. But I guess it's easier living. I mean, certainly you can get more house for your money than LA. LA is, kind of crazy that way.
Yeah,
Um,
Austin's getting that way as well.
yeah, I know, because a lot of people moved to Austin like 10, 15 years ago or
A
something.
lot of people moving today.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went from when I moved here it was 700,000. It's now plus 2 million. If that gives you any indication.
Wow.
Same roads though.
Oh, oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's like, yow.
yeah. And
Uh,
it's growing. So
yeah, yeah. There's what's South by Southwest is in Austin, is that right?
yes, South by Southwest Music
Yeah.
Festival.
What's been your involvement with that? I mean, I noticed a little bit. You were a two-time award winner in that.
Yeah, that's the Austin Music Awards. It is basically Austin's equivalent of the Grammys.
Oh,
So it's like the Grammys for Austin, the city of Austin.
yeah.
Um, and it's cool. It's nice. Austin Chronicles been very good to me. South by Southwest has been really good to me as well. And I played, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 different years um, in that festival. It is not a festival that spotlights jazz
Yeah.
that much, but you know, it has continually had jazz musicians and brought in different jazz musicians from around the world.
Uh-huh.
So it's very beneficial to be involved with. And I do appreciate being involved with them so many years.
Yeah. Um, do you know, Taylor was asking if you know Philip Dizak?
Don't think so.
Taylor, you'll have to write to Jeff and maybe he I don't know who he is exactly, but maybe he's a musician in the area or a teacher at UNT. I don't know. Um, you're a composer as well, of course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And uh, Taylor's asking, what do you find most influential to your compositional process?
Hmm. A lot of things inspire me. I have been inspired by people I've known, like Song for Thomas on my new album. That was inspired by the first friend of mine ever to die of cancer. He was, in his 20s. He just got married. She had just had a baby, and then all of a sudden he gets cancer and he just goes downhill quickly. And then he was gone.
Hmm.
Maybe 3-4 months. Fairly quick for that.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that song about 30 years ago. At the time that he died, and it was one of those things that have I was just inspired by how I felt about him and how he went. And it took a long time to actually get the song where I wanted to. The chord change. It's an interesting melody, so the chord changes had always kind of been a little elusive for me. And then I was just hearing them one day, and I was like, "Oh, that's basically the A section of Alice in Wonderland." So basically, that song is the chords of the A section for Alice in Wonderland, and over that melody, and it worked. And we recorded it last year, and that's how that song came about. Sometimes I'm like with the stuff I'm doing with Ruth Carter. She inspired me. She inspired me to write Waltz with the Breeze. She handed me a set of lyrics. I think she might have had a sense of some kind of melody. She handed that to me. I went home, I looked at the lyrics, and 15 minutes later, I had a song.
Hmm.
And so, like, it's, the inspiration varies greatly.
Yeah. 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 So did she record those songs?
She writes.
Oh,
She's
okay.
not a performer.
I see.
Yeah. So we were working on a children's book that she wrote.
Uh-huh.
And she wrote a while back. She
Yeah.
wanted to put music to some of the ideas in the book. And so we got together and collaborated on that.
Yeah.
She's also the co-composer of the song Crossfire that was written for Stevie Ray Vaughan. So her and her husband, Bill Carter, wrote
Oh,
that among a lot of other tunes. She's really a fabulous lyricist. It's a
huh.
pleasure working with her.
Um, I noticed that you're in a TED Talk.
Yeah,
You're, I guess
I'm not doing any talking. No.
you're performing spontaneous improvisation.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that something we should look at a little bit or no?
If you want to play that, yeah, it's pretty short. I do it with Graham Reynolds, who is does most of the music for Richard Linklater, his films. He's
Uh-huh.
a film composer, classical musician, jazz musician, and they asked me to do something, and I thought about him, and so we did a little duet based on one of my songs called Rose.
Cool. Here we are. Nice piece.
Thank you.
um, what do you think are some of the important elements of free music? Playing free music.
Well, because what you're doing is avant-garde, because what you're doing is not standard, uh, keeping some type of rhythmic concept to me is very important. That kind of holds it together. If you're playing, free or outside stuff melodically, you kind of need something rhythmically that is not that to counteract that. If what you're playing is completely rhythmically free as well, then you kind of need something melodic to keep that structure connected uh, to basically make it music as opposed to just noise. So
So melody
it's the
and rhythm.
rhythm juxtaposed to the melody. You can do one free or the other free, but not both free at the same time.
Yeah, I was talking about the aspect with someone the other day of entering into um, into the universe where everybody lives, and there's there's different elements. Like one element of being yourself and being forward in your ideas. Like I'm going to say this now. Listening, holding back and listening. Um, but this element of being yourself and reacting with someone else being themselves. I feel like that's where everything meets. you know, there's an art form to do that, but I mean, sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're not, of course. But
Yeah,
there is, I think, there's an art form of that too, don't you?
definitely. Yeah. You're always listening, or you should be. And if you're not, then something's not happening. Either you're not doing what you should be doing, or someone's not giving you, what's interesting enough for you to listen to. Either way, it doesn't make for great music unless you are really hearing it's an ensemble, you know.
Yeah.
It has elements that are put together to create a finished product. And so all those elements count, what the bass player is doing, what the drummer's doing, how the drummer's doing that, whether or not he's using that ride or he's using, um, toms or, all those things matter. How a piano player approaches accompaniment, comping, that's so crucial. And although you can play anything when you're playing free, you can't play anything and be musical all the time. It's a really fine line, you know, to play what Marshall Allen likes to play in the upper register when he's playing all that crazy stuff, to play that, when to play it, how to play it, how long to play it is a big, huge thing. How long do you want to be screeching in that upper register?
Yeah.
And what's happening behind it,
Yeah.
it can't just be you out there alone,
Yeah.
making an alto sax sound like, a cat
Yeah.
screaming, which is cool sometimes, depending on what you're doing, but, it can't just all be that.
Yeah. Especially when there's somebody else there. I mean,
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
you're alone, okay, you're alone,
Yeah.
you can do whatever you want. But when there's someone else there, it's a different dynamic.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have a vocal group called Fish to Birds, and you know the Escher paintings, how they kind of mesh from fish into birds.
Yeah.
That's where our name came
Okay. I was gonna ask you.
from. Yeah, and so I don't know if we're still a group. I mean, just over the pandemic and stuff, just kind of. Hmm. But for 8 or 9 years, we were singing together, and mostly a cappella, and sometimes we'd have whatever, a percussionist or a pianist join, but always very free. And yeah, over that time, we really learned a lot. I mean, we had these kind of agreements that we fell into, as far as form went and what worked. Somebody might start what we called a motor, which was a groove, and then
Yeah.
somebody else would come in with a counter line, and then somebody else would probably harmonize with one of those, and then so there were some agreements, and we tried a lot of various things, spoken word, and but it was intriguing, um, because like you say, how long, we each had our own um, choices of what we liked, right? Sometimes they would match and sometimes they wouldn't, you know? Um, one night we'd get down and I thought it was horrible and somebody else thought it was the best night we had.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, I don't know how that is, but anyway, that's what it was. And, but there was, so there's, there's these, and then there's what you were just talking about. There's these dynamics that kind of come in and out, these realities that form that are really beautiful and then are released. It's such a good lesson in life for life, um, and it's I mean that's I think part of why we do what we do, because we innately feel that uh, it's a healthy and a healthy way of experiencing, and which affects other other things in our lives,
Yeah.
whether or not you're one of those artists who say, this is my goal and this is my you're very verbal about it. Whether or not that, I think there's an innate sense of it, like why we do it, or the feeling that goes along with it.
When you play free music, you have so many choices. But like when you first start, it's like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah,
Unlike most music that has some type of set form, like, if I'm gonna play a blues, like I pretty much know how it's gonna start.
yeah,
What's gonna happen? Well, maybe they're gonna play 12 bars up front. Somebody come in with a melody, blah, blah, blah. When you're playing free music, you have such a blank canvas.
yeah,
You can go so many different places. And then at times you have to let go of where you're at for something new to happen. Um, a lot of times we would play sets, we'd start out and, half hour later, when the cassette tape ran out, we stopped playing. So we play for this whole half hour, coming up with ideas the whole time. But at some point in time, you may have to stop doing what you're doing so that this thing can develop over here.
yeah, yeah. Do you this is a Taylor question too, but do you have something outside of music that is fascinating to you?
Play a lot of chess.
Oh, really?
Like to play blitz. I don't know if y'all know what that is. It's three
No.
minute.
Is it a chess related
Yeah,
game?
it's 3 minute chess, 5 minute chess.
Oh, oh wow.
So I like to get a lot of games in. Um, if I could be something other than what I am, It would probably be, a grandmaster getting paid to play chess.
Cool.
But I'm not that good, so I'm never going to be that.
Did you like Queen's Gambit?
It was good. I thought they did a really good job of not making the games boring when they were actually showing games being played. That's, to me, that's the hardest thing about making a movie about chess. Because chess is not that exciting, even if you're playing chess. It's not that exciting. It goes by very slowly most of the time, which is one of the reasons why I play speed chess, because I just got bored. I want people to move faster. So I thought they did a really good job of that, and also, carrying that story how they did. It's a difficult thing. Chess is not easily adapted to the screen.
Yeah.
So I was impressed by it. I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. Yeah. I've played a little bit of chess. I've played enough chess to know that it's extremely challenging. That's what I know now.
It has both the elements of difficulty and simplicity. It's all mixed together. And it's really all about geometry.
Hmm.
It took me a while to figure that out, but it's really about geometry and geometric patterns.
Hmm. That's cool. Are you a teacher as well?
On occasion, yeah. I don't have any students currently, but yeah, I've had trumpet students before. I
Yeah.
had this one student that wanted to learn trumpet and jazz at the same time. I was like, okay, if you want to pay me for it, sure, I'll do it. And fortunately, she had played some piano, so we didn't have to start from square one on the music thing. But it was fascinating to see her development. It's always
Yeah.
fascinating to see how people learn and why they're learning and what works for them as a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fascinating. Yeah. You can really get into their frame of their point of view.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really interesting.
his trumpet playing is kind of nebulous anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like most other instruments. If you play piano, if you don't know a lick of piano, you walk up to a piano, you hit a key, it's gonna sound like a piano.
Yeah.
Sounds just like a piano, just like it.
Right.
Okay. Not so with a trumpet.
Yeah.
So like trying to trying to get the sound out of a mouthpiece is difficult enough.
Yeah.
Trying to explain to someone else how to do that same thing is an entirely different animal. So just figuring out how to teach each individual what an embouchure is and how it works
Yeah.
is challenging.
Yeah, and trumpet is I remember talking to somebody about they they in particular, I know people think of it different ways, but like getting a high note, they actually had to relax more their embouchure. And but I've talked to other people who have not said that. So I think it's again like singing too. It's there are certain principles that are true, but it's also very individual.
Very. And then of course, different mouthpieces and different shapes of people's lips and all of that stuff is very crucial for a trumpet player. And you can't explain it all.
Yeah,
You can only explain so much.
yeah,
The rest is like, okay, take this mouthpiece and go
yeah,
figure this out.
yes. Now that brings me to a question. I hope you don't mind me asking, but so you're missing a tooth right here.
Yeah.
Does that uh do you fill that in when you're playing or do you
No,
use
no,
that actually?
no. It's never filled in ever.
And is that part of your sound?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's why I can push so much wind through the horn.
Oh,
Um, you know, I can play really, really, really loud.
Oh,
And I can sustain a note for a really, really long time. And both of those things I think have to do with that gap. Um, and I never, even when I was younger, 15, 16, whatever, I knew if I put a bridge in that would affect my embouchure, so I wouldn't do that.
huh, cool. That's so cool. Just like it's even a further reason uh, to know what you have, you know, right? This
Yeah,
is what I have, and this is what I'm going to work with. And good, I'm going
yeah. I mean, and I learned to play with that. Yeah, I couldn't play with a partial. I had, when I was younger, because this happened maybe the second year I was playing. I
yeah,
lost that too.
yeah.
So I've been playing that way for a long time, and my embouchure's changed over the years. When I got to college, I finally found the right combination of techniques that I still use to today. And I had a really good graduate assistant that taught me the no pressure system, which is essential to really playing trumpet.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people don't use it, but you can really tell the difference. And then the syllabics, using the syllables to form the embouchure, combining those two is what I do to play.
So using the syllables, like, so you're actually thinking about producing a syllable?
When you play, say if you're going up the scale, you would do T and ta. So T, 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 T. And then as you go down, you do ta, ta, ta. So or E and R if you're slurring. But those are the basic syllables to help form the notes while you're playing. And when you're doing jazz, the syllables change slightly depending on what you're playing, but the concept is the same. It is a lot like singing. It really is.
Well, also like E and ah, that's like definitely E is easier high and
Yeah. E goes up. Yeah. R goes down.
yeah, right.
And as you play those notes, especially like I was working on playing the Haydn trumpet concerto for a while.
Uh-huh.
I had actually thought about auditioning for the San Francisco Orchestra when they had a second principal spot open. So I was developing that and really understanding how essential it is that I go back to those fundamental syllables to make those notes, because that kind of trumpet playing is totally different than what I know. And the classical stuff at that level is so hard and so precise. You have to use everything perfectly every time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a different in singing, of course, too. So
Yeah, yeah,
very,
very
yeah,
different kind of playing.
yeah. Yeah. I noticed that you were, let's see, I was, sorry, my brain was divided. I was going to say, I wanted to listen to something and then I glanced over at your bio and I noticed you were in the Japanese Airlines magazine.
I was, yeah, yeah. That was unexpected. All of a sudden, I think it was connected with my drummer at the time, Masumi Jones,
Mm,
who's Japanese and a very popular drummer in our town. And so I think they were interviewing her, and adjacently, they wanted to talk to me and about it as well. So we both wound up being in that magazine. It had like a circulation of 4.1 million at the time. So it was pretty impressive, I think.
pretty cool. Yeah. Have you hung out in Japan?
I have not, haven't been.
You would like it and they would like you.
Yeah, I thought so. I know that jazz scene is big there. Certainly in New York, half the clubs are full with people from Japan.
Yeah.
Seems like when I go. uh,
Yeah.
very popular music among the
Yeah.
Japanese people.
Yeah, Japan is it's very interesting. To me, it's a little bit like another planet, but I've been there lots. One cool thing, which is entertaining just as an idea, is if you're walking through the streets and you hear music coming over, speakers, it's like Charlie Parker, and
Oh,
it's not like pop music or anything. It's yeah, walking through like some of the train stations. That's what you hear.
that is great.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yes, very.
Yeah, it's such an interesting place. Um, let's see. I was looking at what oops. What about oh, hello, everything's moving around. Here we go. What about this Miles Davis tribute show?
It's a live performance from KUT, the local radio station,
Should I play or
public
should
radio
I play
station.
something else?
If you like to, sure, you can play that.
Okay. Cool. I can't, it must be hard to be a trumpet player and play all blues without hearing Miles.
Yeah, I just want to mention the players on that. That was Terrence McDaniel on the drums, Glenn Shutes on bass, and Dr. James Polk, former musical director for the Ray Charles Orchestra, playing keyboard and kicking.
Great, great band. Yeah. That
Some
was
of the
a,
Austin talent.
yeah, that was a radio show.
Yeah, it was a video recording of a live radio broadcast.
Yeah. Not too long ago.
That was a while back.
It was.
Yeah.
You haven't changed. You look the same. Are you going to be one of those guys who gets to be 90 and you're going to look like this?
That's the plan. We'll see how it works out. I'll let you know. If you're around, I will definitely let you know. Yeah, I'll be like, that was my plan and it worked out.
God, Flip Mann, who is Shelley Mann's widow, she's 103 today. No, 102. She's
Wow.
102.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. She was like tap dancing up until 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw Roy Haynes about, it was pre-COVID, so it must have been about 6 years ago. And he was 87, I think.
Yeah.
And he got from behind the drums, dropped the mic on stage, and started tap dancing.
Yeah, maybe tap dancing is the way to go.
It might be, it works for him, that and drumming. Yeah, I know a lot of old drummers. Just saying.
Well, yeah, Terry Gibbs. He's like 99 or something. I just was talking to Mike Dees yesterday, who knows Terry. 99, I think, 98 or 9.
It
Come on.
sounds Gary.
Huh?
It sounds Gary, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Jerry, sorry.
Jerry. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry lives in town. Jerry, well, he lives in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, he plays regularly in Austin.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not sure what I'll be doing then. I might still be starting venues. Maybe then I'll attract a big crowd. You know, hey, Catherine Segal-Garcia, she's like 95. She started that venue over there. Let's go check it out.
Yeah, I think you automatically become a legend after a certain age.
I think so. Yeah, but I'm not sure which age that is.
Uh, my friend Ernie Durawa, drummer for Texas Tornadoes, he's a jazz drummer too. He's actually in that first video. But he turned 80 last December. And he's like, everybody's calling me a legend. That just means you're old, man.
Yeah, it's interesting getting older. I mean, just of course, the normal stuff in life, it changes anyway, no matter if you're 20 or 50. But I think it's kind of cool getting older, dropping away. I mean, there was a time when I was just, I, I never stopped, something would come into my awareness and I would go do it. And, I wasn't as tired and,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But now it's kind of, I have different appreciation for things, I think that's a
Yeah.
big part of it. Yeah. And I guess also been doing it so long that the choices of music, in music, of what I want to do, even in the moment, it just seems more quality, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important, especially with recording, to like put out the absolute best that you have, to really like to really represent to the best of of your ability, whatever you're creating. So to me, yeah, the quality is way more important than the quantity.
Yeah. Do you prefer live or recorded better?
Mm, it just depends. Sometimes it's more convenient to record while you're performing. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just a money issue.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't have a particular preference depending on the circumstances. A lot of live recordings are really great. Take the Ahmad Jamal
Well,
recording.
live recording to me is different than going in the studio and recording. I mean, I usually have to do my vocals over for,
Oh, yeah,
like a regular recording.
yeah,
I mean, there were a few live gigs that I've done recently that were recorded, and which I'm okay with, but in the studio, um, I think my body is more restricted. That's what I think. Because when I'm live, I'm not listening to myself,
yeah,
and I'm just, the body is, the body has to rise to the occasion, you know,
yeah. It
and
is in that sense easier to be recorded while you're performing because you're generally thinking about the performance as opposed to about the recording.
yeah,
So in that sense, yeah, it can be easier. But then again, you don't have the, oh, we're going to stop and do it over again factor.
exactly. Excuse me.
Which frankly, I'm not big on. Most of my stuff is first or second take. A lot of first takes. I really believe in that. I know Miles did that. That was his thing. Go in, do a take, and that's it. Not a whole bunch of second takes. Because it diminishes after a time, sort of, or can.
Yeah,
Plus, studio time costs. So
yes,
next, it's kind of that next factor. Let's get it done. We only got 4 hours.
exactly. I recorded with a pianist named Ross Tompkins, who was kind of one of those dream accompanists for a piano singer,
Yeah.
and he was actually Jack Sheldon's accompanist. I'm sure you
Oh,
know Jack Sheldon, right?
yeah.
And very um, experienced, confident player, um, and he was the guy who just one take and that was it. That was how he made his records, his solo records. Just sat down for 2 hours and that was it,
Yeah.
you know. And even in the one that we made, it was pretty much it. I mean, I fixed a few vocal things, but I didn't really fix a lot because it was so in the moment with him.
Yeah. This last album, well, most of it was recorded in about a 4 hour span.
Oh,
There's
wow.
two tracks that were done on a separate session. The vocal track were done in a different session,
Yeah.
but the bulk of it was done in 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's how long I had the musicians for.
Yeah.
That was my time frame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I usually find that the musicians are good. They're like one time, two times,
Yeah,
usually. But for me, it's like, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I produce my own stuff. So maybe I'm being a producer too. But, you know, listening back, that's another thing too. Listening back can change it within a month. You know,
yeah,
I can listen first and not be happy at all. Then in a month, listen again. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
yeah, that was okay. Yeah.
yeah. It's funny how that works sometimes.
Yeah, it's really, really odd, isn't it?
Hmm.
It can change from day to day, Wow,
It can.
that's really cool. Oh, that was really bad. Yeah. Um, so let's see. So you have this new record out, and are you utilizing it to get gigs, or do you want to go on the road and play?
uh, I I wouldn't mind, doing some touring with it, or at least, a couple of different places, a couple of different cities, just as a promotion. But mostly, my schedule hadn't changed much.
Yeah. What's on your bucket list? Look,
Uh,
maybe he doesn't have a bucket list.
Pulitzer Surprise for music.
Or chess.
They don't give a Pulitzer Prize for chess, I don't think. Pulitzer Prize for music, Grammy. I'll take either one of those.
Cool. Do you do you have any do you
Carnegie Hall with him.
Carnegie Hall? Yeah, man. If you played Carnegie Hall, what size group would you use?
Probably a quintet.
Have you played with larger groups?
Some, not much.
Uh,
Big band stuff, mostly college. I actually had an offer to play with the orchestra recently, but didn't work out.
uh,
But normally, I think the largest ensemble I've had 7 people. And that's my electric group. And I have 2 keyboard players.
oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
So you're playing songs, but you're improvising within it too, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I like doing that.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to bring when you're trying to bring high art to people, it helps to do it in a way that they're familiar with. So if you can play, like, if I can play a Prince song and they get the melody, they understand, oh, this is a Prince song, yeah. Um, but you have to give them some of what they want and then some of what you want. So I want to show them my playing, and I want to show them where the music can go and how complex and interesting it can be. But
Yeah.
also, I want them to be able to dance. I
Yeah.
want them to get up. I want them to move. I want them to tell their friends, yeah, we came out and we had a great time. And it was, grooving music.
Right.
So those elements are important, especially when you don't have a singer.
When you
And
don't
once you add a singer in, it's a whole nother element. People relate to things differently when
yeah.
someone's singing,
Uh-huh.
especially if there's lyrics.
Yeah.
That connects to everybody on a different level. When you don't have that, then it's important to choose a song where you can play the song without lyrics and they still know the lyrics. So what should we do, like, Papa is Rolling Stone. Papa was Rolling Stone, right? So everybody knows that tune, right? And you don't have to sing it for people to get what you're saying.
Exactly.
And that's really important to connect with people.
Yeah.
Because, people performing, it's about the audience. A lot of performers, they forget about that. It's about, you can play music at your house by yourself. You don't have to go out and have an audience for that. When you have an audience, then it becomes about them, not about you.
Well, again, it's the relationship, you know.
Yeah,
And so you've brought in another being or beings,
yeah,
so they make a difference.
definitely.
We always used to say that in Japan to our audiences, like, being here, you're part of this experience, which was cool. um, I sent you this CD of mine, but I wanted to show you just a little bit of talking about um, what you were just talking about. Like something, playing something that is familiar and yet not familiar. This um, this was one of those songs that some people liked and some people did not. You know, it was like check it out a little bit. As it goes on, it gets even more deep. So I think people just freaked out over this. Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. And I feel like I'm clinging to a cloud I can't understand. I get misty. Now, of course, that's the first time through, but as it gets later, it gets really. That's why I'm following you. On my own. And it gets
Almost got a
deeper.
gospel feel.
Yeah. Through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left. And we get kind of kooky, like yeah. Oh, I am too misty, much too misty. Yeah. Oh, I'm too misty. Yeah, so anyway, but I just wanted
I
to share
dig
that with you because it's that, some people dug it and some people did not.
it.
You
Was
know,
that in Japan, you said?
well, that guy and I traveled for 20 years throughout Japan. He lives there, and but we recorded that in Phoenix, actually,
Okay.
in this amazing studio. This guy had a grand piano sunken into a space. And yeah, and the engineer had been Paul, um, who's the Beatle? Paul
McCartney.
McCartney. Yeah, he had been Paul McCartney's engineer, and
Oh,
he
wow.
was definitely an incredible engineer. And I mean, the studio was kind of, amazing in that too. But yeah, Phil and I, actually, that record Alone Together was after we had been traveling for a month in Japan. And we had done standards, and people always like would come up to us and say, "Could you do some standards, please?" And we were doing standards. They just,
Yeah.
But anyway, so
They
we
mean standards that they know.
exactly, or the way that they know them. Um, and so we had just developed arrangements just for, having fun. I mean, he lived there and he was so ensconced in what he supposedly had to do. So he was always stretching his boundaries, which was great for me too.
Yeah, it took me a while before I realized that actually it was a saxophone player friend of mine that pointed out that Misty is the same changes as I want to talk about you.
Oh,
And
huh.
we were playing Misty one night, and he's like, "I'll show you what I'm talking about." He just plays that. He played the melody over on top of it. I was like, "Oh." He
Wow.
was like, "I don't really like that song." You don't like? I was like, "You don't like Misty? Why?" Because really, it's another song.
How interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, I want to talk about you is the same changes as Misty.
Wow. I didn't know that. Okay. Little known facts.
I'm really very. I'm almost like a changes savant. if such a thing exists. Like I can hear a set of changes normally, and I can just play over them. Sometimes while I'm hearing them,
Yeah.
but certainly if I hear them one time, I can play over them. Pretty
Yeah.
much any set of changes.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
It helps.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's been 2 hours, Jeff.
Really, wow.
Yep. And so I want to thank you for giving me 2 hours of your time.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoy speaking with you a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Feelings mutual.
Anything you want to mention to people before you go?
Um, just that you can, catch my music on Spotify or Amazon, iTunes, whatever you're listening to, and do like and subscribe on the various formats, YouTube especially. If you can, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and like it. That helps out cats like myself. Trying to make a little scratch out.
Yeah. I have one friend who comes on. Apparently, he's not on today, but he'll say, I just made your guest 0.0003 richer. Cents richer.
Every 0.0003 counts.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow I have a singer who's kind of a R&B gospel singer, fabulous singer here in LA, Keith Borden. He also started this nonprofit called musicrx.org, and where he raises money to send people who otherwise would not like go out of the house or go to things, buy them tickets to hear concerts and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he is a fabulous singer. So that's
Cool.
that. And if you're in LA, actually, even if you're not in LA, you can see on Facebook Live Kulak's Woodshed on Thursday night. There's going to be a Brazilian night. That's in North Hollywood here, and top Brazilian players. And it's really a beautiful thing. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, that's kind of it for this week. And again, nice talking to you. And I'm heading towards archives soon, like for a little bit, so I can get to my recordings. So because I do archives on 4 days a week normally, so, and then
Okay.
live 3 days a week. So, yeah, but like this week, John Novello, pianist, who had a lot of great groups with some real interesting people. John Tegmeyer, probably one of the best clarinetists I've ever heard.
Good.
Tom Lure, saxophone player, and J.B. Dias, who's real smart guy. He's the head of the education department in the Herbie Hancock Institute, which used to be the Thelonious Monk Institute. So,
Okay.
yeah, he was very cool to talk to. Wow, what a brain. Woo! It's a perfect job for him, man. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for this day, and thanks, Jeff Lofton, and I really appreciate you and your music, and it was great to hang out.
I appreciate you having me on, Kathy. Pleasure. Anytime you want to do it, just let me know.
Okay, cool, man. And now Zoom is permanently your friend.
Yes, and I know how to deal with it. Thanks for all the help.
Okay. All right, everybody.